I mean, 5, 7 years from now, I want to be in the cabin of a self-driving car, having a holographic conference meeting after I've dialed up some, 3D entertainment, when it's time for me, to do a conference call. I'd love to see that. I think that's, 2025, someone might have a good working version of all that working together.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert Schmidt. I am Deloitte's Chief IoT Technologist. Welcome to Coffee with Mr IoT. Today my guest is Tony Parisi, the Global Head of VR/AR Ad Innovation at Unity. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good. Good to be here. How's it going?
It's going good. We're recording this at South by Southwest. I'm here a few days, you're here a week. Have you been on walking around yet? When did you come?
I came walking over here from where I was at the JW Marriott, and I walked by that Amazon Prime activation that's going on, and there was a string quartet playing Queen's Somebody to Love. It was glorious. That's been my day today. I spoke on a panel this morning, came over here to do this with you, and that was what happened on the way here.
How many times have you been to South by?
Just a few now. I've spoken at the last two, though, so as an active participant now, twice.
So when you come to shows like this, what sort of what do you talk about? What are the things you want people to hear?
So the session this morning was called Immersion at Scale, how AR and MR are going to change everything. Broad sweeping topic, another panelist from a digital agency, panelist from CTA, the CES people who study the markets on all these things. And we're looking at a lot of different things when you talk on a panel like that, market adoption factors, terminology around this stuff is introduced to consumers and into businesses, examples of content creation, future casting for what the world's going to look like in a few years when we're all augmented with maybe smart glasses and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my shtick typically is the where we are today. Talk about some interesting things happening on the ground. My purview at Unity is that we see so many things being built with our software. So I get to cite some use cases, and across the board it was very broad. So we talked about enterprise, we talked about marketing activations with these kind of technologies, entertainment, storytelling, and then usually with an eye toward, won't this be a great future when we have magical digital stuff in the air around us, probably not all stuck in the matrix with headsets, more probably like AR and some kind of fabulous glasses like maybe what you're wearing, but have digital displays on them so that we can see magic in the world around us, and maybe how 5G is going to influence that because fatter pipes, lower latency, more compute out on the edges, all percolating into this magical mirror world universe, as Kevin Kelly recently called it. So that was this morning. We'll see what tomorrow brings.
Are you looking forward to something in particular that you want to see while you're here?
There's some other session content I want to see about AI and humans, education, how VR is impacting education and training. It's random smattering. I'll go for the barbecue and the bands too. I mean, it's such a great event where there's so many different cultures interoperating here. You've got interactive and the film and storytelling and the music, and the lines are blurring among them too. And so a lot of the sessions are going on simultaneously and have elements of all of that. There's some great music content in VR showing in the expo, for example.
It's interesting, right? I often ask myself, I have a lot of people, well, first of all, I find AR really enabling for me to tell stories, right? How do I tell people about the Internet of Things, how machines and people connect? I've actually on the floor here for you one of our AR-enabled factory lines. I'll show it to you in a second if you want. But for me, it's a big part, and I always wonder, why do I talk so much about AR? And I think it's really that the Internet of Things sensors are really becoming an integral part of augmented reality for sure, maybe also virtual reality. Do you find that too? How do you see the interaction between AR, VR, and IoT?
So very specifically, I know there's one company, I mentioned it to you earlier when we were chatting, called Experiential, based in the Bay Area. I think they're in Sunnyvale, California, that is doing large-scale augmented reality marketing type activations in, say, stadiums or large complexes, where it's a combination of IoT technology, such as beacons or whatever, connecting to phone apps, connecting to big screens. So for example, you could be at a sporting event and something could be happening up on the Jumbotron and you point your phone at it and magic comes out of it, like Bud Light cans, as a t-shirt cannon game, but it's cans of Bud Light that you would never shoot out of a cannon in the real world. Cartoon Bud Light cannons are coming out through your phone, and if you catch them, you get to go get a free Bud Light, right? At the concession. I mean, brilliant.
People
That's
do
brilliant.
crazy things for free stuff, don't they?
Yeah, and then the winner gets put up on the screen too. It's absolutely brilliant. So that's just one sort of concrete example of that. More broadly, when you think about augmented reality really has kind of two key technology innovations going on. I think we tend to, certainly at Unity, because people use our technology this way, we tend to key on the visual aspects of it. We're creating 3D digital content you can see now through a phone or a tablet or in a mixed reality headset, or some days fashionable smart glasses. And we think about that, but what's equally or perhaps more important is all the computer vision that's powered by machine learning, that's using sensors, that's using cameras to effectively extend our eyes. It's recognizing the world around us. It's recognizing images. It's recognizing people's faces. It's segmenting your body out, and so that I could replace the background I'm looking at you at, right? That's behind you right now, and put the back. Well, I could. Then we could do diminished reality and pull you right out, right?
Diminished reality. I've never heard that term.
TM. I just coined that. So yeah, we could replace the background so you could have the Eiffel Tower behind you or some such. So that is kind of IoT technology in a sense, and not to mention, and I mean these lines aren't that strict, right? Not to mention edge compute is going to be very prevalent in the future, along with 5G networks, so that we're going to have ubiquitous computing, so that you can have really light glasses. The glasses will be display and sensors. And then there will be more computers out there computing for us as close, we'll be walking by everywhere, buildings, in our homes, presumably it'll be just like woven into the fabric of the objects around us. So the compute can be distributed, not centralized in the cloud. You can actually do that same kind of idea of pre-computing heavier 3D graphics and crunching the computer vision algorithms, but not do it up on a headset so that you have to have a heavy pair of glasses on your head. This has been one of the limiting factors with VR displays, for example, is if you want one of these, what they call standalone headsets, like the Oculus Quest that is coming out, of the Oculus Go before it, it's portable, you don't have any wires, which is fabulous. So you can rove around in a world like this, but you have to have all the processing on board. So not only the display, which is inherently energy consuming and requires some weight, but also all the computes on there. So if you could push the compute part out to the edge and have just sensors and displays up top, then you're going to get a really light device. And we could get to this place where we had super light smart glasses, and you don't need to necessarily carry a computer pack around like you do with the Magic Leap today, for example.
I'm wondering, I think of, for me today, augmented reality is a lot about just using my phone or a tablet, because everybody has one. It's so easy, right? And I can point it. I look at stuff through the camera that's on there, right? And then I augment it, and it's very simple. Everybody can do it. Do you think that when the glasses came out, in particular Google Glass, did that actually slow adoption down for a little bit because we were so stuck on having something on our face we look through? Or do you think it actually accelerated AR and VR? And I think you can argue both sides, but
I think you can argue both sides. Google Glass is an interesting case where that was a moment in time, culturally. It was a different world, first of all. We're talking 5 to 7 years ago when this was all happening. And people weren't as comfortable with issues around privacy. If you were taking videos of them, for example, now we're all like, you just assume if a camera's being held up, you might be on it at this point, right? And so it was different from that perspective in terms of sort of consumer acceptance and comfort level around that. And then Google got literally ground up in the gears of a culture war in San Francisco at the time too, which was all about the tech industry displacing people in San Francisco, rents going through the roof, not that this has gotten any better. But at that time, there was a lot of backlash around it, and Google was really caught up in that machinery too, where there's a huge backlash.
Did you own one?
What's that?
Did you own one?
I never had one. I tried it on. I was like, well, okay. I mean, I'm a 3D person, so seeing just some map directions in this thing was just like, okay, whatever. Not for $1,500, not for me. Yeah, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna have some. It's not like now you get the Bose AR glasses. You're not seeing visually, but you're hearing audio. $200, I'll pay that. But that was just a high price point, right? Very early adopter, and especially just there was a big mismatch between that price and the value it was providing. I mean, you compare that price, which is roughly what a Magic Leap today is, you get, just over $2,000 for that Creator Edition. You get so much more value out of that. I mean, you got a full computer in there. It's an Android thing you stick in your pocket with this little brick. And you've got amazing 3D graphics out there that are persistent, and you can walk around them. So it's not just like getting little map directions and doing this kind of stuff in the air. So I think it's a different time. Maybe the backlash on glass slowed things down a little bit, but while glass was going through its thing, we were seeing Vuforia on tablets and phones. And now we're in 2010, 2011, 2012. People were doing industrial use augmented reality with it. There was some gimmicky map stuff of the time with AR and some other companies that just never quite got over the top. Felt gimmicky, I should say. There were actually real good use cases for it, but it was perceived that way. Those tropes are all coming back in with the newer, like Google mapping, AR mapping. They're showing off stuff that's not dissimilar from what AR was doing, a little more sophisticated in the design. I think we're 5 years later, very different time. Consumer readiness, consumer acceptance. Think about what Snap's done to educate the market with silly filters to start. Now it's become some real utility stuff. First front-facing camera, now to the back-facing camera with objects in the world. And you combine that with some of the more utility things that we're seeing from Amazon and IKEA around shopping and all that. I think we're in a different time. And again, also, if you add to that people have a very different point of view on use of the camera, situations change completely.
So interesting how you mentioned Vuforia. I want to show you for like 2 minutes. Can you grab my phone is here. I'm just gonna show you this. This is actually a. My problem was we did Internet of Things on a factory line. And I went to a show and I wanted to show the factory line, but you can't bring a full factory line to a show floor. It was actually a keynote. And so I said, can we do this in augmented reality? So we created the virtual factory by Deloitte. And
why are there rubber ducks on the assembly line? Is that what you're making, actually?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we
this
decided
looks like a very
that
serious operation, and then there are little rubber duckies on there.
Well, that's exactly the point, right? So what happens here is...
Oh my God, there they are.
We decided the real factory line that we're working on made plastic cups, and we thought it's more fun to have rubber ducks. So this is a full-on factory line. People love it. And there's actually, if you look on the right there, that's the scrap ones. The FX.eyes.
That's
and on
amazing.
this side you can step into it. But here's the part that's really
your
fun.
people in television land will see this, right? You're going to edit in some video of this so they can see this. I hope this is fantastic.
Well, and here's the thing that's really amazing about this. You talked about big size. This scales up. So this is Vuforia with Unity underneath it. And this scales up. We have a 40-foot long version of this. And the factory line is human height. And you can step into it. And here's the funniest thing about this. When you give this to people, they walk around it.
They know.
They think it's real.
Yeah.
When you actually can walk straight through it, you can see what goes on inside of it. So it has this training, educational impact to it, where you can actually walk inside. There's actually little rubber ducks hidden in there. We have like gamified it in the sense that there's little Easter eggs in there.
That's amazing.
Anyhow, Vuforia, Unity, and so forth.
That kind of brings up a good point. Not to plug Unity too much here, but this is more really about what we're seeing in terms of phenomenon with the use of XR technologies. With a lot of VR. But
what's XR, by the way?
Sorry. Inside baseball going on here. XR is an industry abbreviation a lot of us technologists use that are in AR, VR, MR.
NER.
NER, right. So
XR.
augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality. The X. Some people have tried to brand extended reality. There's all kinds of things out there. I don't know if that's you guys or not. Someone uses that. Merged reality. It goes on, right? And so X is a shorthand for that. Is what we just use in the field, just so we don't have to hyphenate or put the slashes in. Not at all a consumer or normal human-friendly term. We actually spoke about this on our panel a little bit this morning. There's other more familiar terms. I mean, some people are starting to say spatial computing. For example, that's what Magic Leap's trying to run with. That is so geeky. I mean, I think that's going to be great if you want to describe an operating system and say this operating system is inherently 3D and understands 3D constructs. It knows how to ingest the real-world environments around you. It's spatial. Makes a lot of sense. That is not a very consumery term in my opinion. So there's other things out there, immersive. Kevin Kelly coined mirror world recently in a Wired article. I like that one a lot. I've been running with that.
That's really good.
Just because it's got cultural implications, plus there's, there's the Black Mirror side of this, but it's, hello, it's kind of happening, right? I mean, we're creating digital twins of things. We are augmenting our lives with this digital stuff, and so it's a fairly good term, I think, for that. And so I'm kind of running with it. I've already used it in a couple of articles when it makes sense, when we're talking about this more as an emergent cultural phenomenon, as opposed to trying to sell someone, no one's going to sell you a mirror world device. You're not going to go in the store, But I'm telling you, AR is actually it's getting pretty consumer friendly.
I was going to ask you exactly
consumer term, like Bose AR. You can walk into the Westfield in San
We
Francisco.
just met someone in the elevator.
Yeah, have you been to the Bose house here?
We're going to go.
Go check the glasses out. Yeah, and you live in San Francisco. You can go to the Westfield, to the Bose store, and buy one of those pairs of glasses. Now you have prescriptions, but these are sunglasses, and they're just audio. They're not visual displays. That'll be hopefully some next step in the future towards smart glasses. But it's spatialized audio, so you can turn your head around, hear things coming from different places. They also have a toolkit for Unity that lets you author that kind of experience and also connect it to location services. So you could be walking by a building on a walking tour and get information about it. Or you could maybe be listening to an ad-supported podcast and get a product offer when you're walking by some brick and mortar store. There's a lot of possibilities for that stuff. But my point in talking about this now is they call it Bose AR. No shame to it. I think the assumption being people understand what that means. Mm-hmm. And in the context of sunglasses, they understand if they look around, that the sound is going to change. It's binaural. There's stuff coming from different places.
So I'm curious about, I want to close out talking about the future, but for today, Pokemon Go has been around, I don't know, what is it now, 3 years that it came out? Something like this.
Approximately.
There was people had it all over the place. It's taken all the way to now for the very first I would argue that Google Maps is the first kind of day-to-day usage where you go on Google, use Google Maps, and you say, hey, I want to walk to the JW Marriott here, I want to walk to the conference room show floor, and it gives me overlay off the street where to turn. Mm-hmm. And that's really augmented reality in real-life applications. Why haven't we seen more of this today? Why has so much of AR, and particularly VR, been about gaming and those kind of things? Why hasn't it really embedded itself in our apps today? What's missing today?
Yeah, so I think that we've been on a steady progression toward more and more daily use of AR content, not just through entertainment, but through utility applications like we've seen from IKEA Place. Lowe's had a Wayfinder they built a while back. So that utility has been there. Yes, they're not every day, but they're everyday-ish. I mean, they're sort of, normal, typical uses of technology like this that a consumer would get value from. Now, why not every day yet? When you talk about something like the Google Maps AR, we should probably talk about what it takes to do that technologically. One of the reasons we haven't had this before is that GPS is not
it doesn't give you the location enough.
Reliable. You can come out of a subway and you're just take you 5 minutes to get your compass straightened out, right? Or it screws up a lot of times, and it's not very high resolution, right? So for these kind of street maneuvers we're talking about, you need higher resolution stuff, and the way to do that is to actually use machine learning to recognize the surroundings. And so if you think about how much data that's required and the actual activity of acquiring that data, that is a massive, mammoth effort that only someone, the scale of a Google is going to be able to take on. And this is what they did with Street View, and it took them a while to get all those street views with those cars roaming around. You need the same thing, street by street, building by building, to have the accuracy we're talking about.
So you're saying that GPS accuracy has still been a limitation?
GPS has, we complement the GPS with this kind of image recognition now through machine learning, and you can get much better accuracy on this kind of turn by turn. And when you've got your phone up and you're getting arrows directing you turn by turn, you can't be walking in the streets, and this stuff's got to be pretty spot on.
It's very curious, very interesting. So let's talk about the future. Where we're going to be 3 years from now, what role would you as Unity like to play in this? By the way, for people who don't know, Unity is actually the platform underneath much of what goes on. You are a platform for game development, lots of three-dimensional development. On that, by the way, just to come back one more time, I find that many people still think in 2D. And is that shift from thinking in 2D to 3D, that human change, part of it too, that we don't see enough adoption?
It is part of it, but it's coming. I mean, you cited the example, you showed me the example of this wonderful AR factory simulation, and people were moving around, they're learning to move around in 3D. They're becoming accustomed. There's a bunch of things going on.
But storytelling in 3D is different, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's still, now I'm going to just hoist myself here, but it's spatial. They're both spatial, right? So this is a good way to talk about it. You know, it is three-dimensional stuff laid out in a three-dimensional world, the one we live in. And folks are comfortable with that. I don't think there's any lack of comfort for that. Yeah, I mean, they've spent time becoming accommodated to 2D interfaces because that's all we could do technologically for years. But now with real-time 3D, which Unity is at the heart of powering, and there's a whole revolution happening in computing. That's what I was going to bring up earlier before we went down the XR tangent, was that you showed me a Unity application for industrial use. I could cite many, many industries using our technology to build VR, AR, MR applications now that are outside the game industry. That's why I work at Unity. 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago now, I met with the executive team. They said, hey, we got this first world problem, which is everyone's using our stuff to do all the VR and the AR, but we're a company that powers games. You know, the company had been around over a decade already. Super serving game developers, started out with the independents and then the big studios started adopting. Then mobile took off and we became the predominant way people build their mobile games. And then when VR came along, we started supporting all those VR platforms as well as the AR platforms like Vuforia, and heavily invested in those. And customers just started using our stuff because the tool was free to get started. It's relatively easy compared to other engine technology and 3D tools. And they had this problem, auto industry's using our stuff, we don't know how to sell products to them, like what do we do? So that's why I joined, and for the first year of working at Unity, that's what I spent most of my focus on, is talking to customers in automotive and film, education and training for corporate, and we're seeing those use cases across the board in all these industries based on a game engine. Well, so what's happening is, from that side, from the economics of the production technology, we're the premier production technology for doing that, because you need a tool that does 3D and does it in real time. From the consumer side, my point of view on this is we have at least 2, maybe 3, depending how you count it, generations of consumers who grew up with video games, interactive technology like iPads. You give a little kid a magazine, they'll try and swipe on it, tap it, right? And CG movies. So I think, depending on the age of the person you're talking to and their level of technological sophistication, there's a drop-off with older people, clearly, but new generations of consumers aren't going to have a problem with this, and they're being educated by Snap and Amazon and everyone else right now. So we're going to see this.
What's the future?
We're going to see this hockey stick in the next couple of years.
What's the future you'd like to really call in?
Well, the future that's always my North Star is always, was driven by a vision of Princess Leia on the tabletop, the Star Wars thing. That's what hooked me on this idea years ago, and then I was fortunate enough to be able to practice it in one way or another when I got on the job.
So you're a Star Wars guy then?
Yeah, I'm a
Star Trek guy, so I was
No, I'm more of a Star Trek guy. But that image of Princess Leia on the tabletop 40 plus years ago now, really inspired me as a little kid, and then I somehow I unconsciously, I think, sought out the 3D graphics jobs within whatever company I was in, and then got into VR myself eventually. So that's kind of a North Star, is the holographic communication. I'd like to see this stuff be the future of user interface for Wikipedia. Where we get all our knowledge and how we acquire it all. Why is Wikipedia just these flat, black and white pages with a few images, right? We should have all that sum total knowledge of everything people know about the universe and everything around us and ourselves represented in 3D and accessible at our fingertips, right? We can just summon it up like magicians. That's what keeps me going as a vision for the future.
Is that 3 years, 5 years? Are we going to do this thing, what we're doing here in holographic 3D in 3 years, 5 years? What do you think?
I think it's going to take a while. The capture technology is evolving. It's moving fast. There's low-end capture technologies from like Scatter Studios in New York. There's higher-end production capture technologies, Metastage in LA, based on the Microsoft capture tech. That's a few years out before that's going to go down market enough. I'd love that. 5, 7 years from now, I want to be in the cabin of a self-driving car, having a holographic conference meeting after I've dialed up some 3D entertainment, when it's time for me to do a conference call. I'd love to see that. I think that's, I don't know, 2025, someone might have a good working version of all that working together. It's going to be a while still, I think.
I have to tell you, it fascinates me how you talk about this such flat, sort of like, I'm sitting in a self-driving car and it's going to be like dialing up and there's going to be 3D. I'm like, holy, I want that now. I'm like,
oh my God.
sitting here like,
I sound so jaded, don't I? Don't
I
mean
guess
to
this
be.
is what happens when you work
I
with a company that has a 3D gaming engine underneath it. You kind of see a lot of cool stuff.
And yeah, and when you do it as long as I have, of course. But I do still think I have childlike wonder. I said that deadpan, but that is what gets me out of bed every day. Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think you're not like Harry Potter. That stuff is
I don't
awesome.
know, I'm a
I read
sucker fan. I told you that.
I read the books. Oh, no. Get back here. Is it stuck? Oh, good. All right.
Nice. Nice. Now just come back to your table.
Get out of there.
Oh, you're turning it now.
Oh, I didn't mean to. Oh, is that steer? Oh, come on.
So,
I see.
Just use the left one to turn it back. The left one,
Oh.
the other way. Keep going, keep turning. Turn more. More.
I can't tell which way's the front.
Keep going. Okay, now fly. Okay,
Wow.
fly back.
All right.
Okay, left now. That's perfect. Now you got it. See?
I'm a 3D guy. You know how to rotate coordinate systems, but that's crazy.
Just bring it down to Robert's lap.
How do I land it?
Just pull down. Pull the left stick down.
I'm trying. There we go. All right, we did it.
Nice
Close
work,
enough.
Tony. Fanciest landing so far.
Well, Tony, I really appreciate your time. Thank you
Same
so
here,
much
Robert.
for coming
Thank you.
here, sitting here with me.
It was awesome.
And with that, we're coming to an end for our coffee chat today. Thank you for watching Coffee with Mr IoT. Thank you, Tony, for being here.
Thank you.
And if you missed any part of today's show or any past shows, please check out my YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe down there. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.
Here we go.
All right. All right, let me take you for a spin now. I'm feeling very ninja now. Okay, come back this one. Yeah, I mean it's kind of like using a 3D modeling package on your desktop where you're making 3D stuff but you're operating everything in 2D. This is like, almost hit that lamp. I don't want you guys to have a bill for the lamp. Let's go this way. I'm going to try and get it through backwards. That's like the real ninja stuff. So hold on.
Got it. Okay.
All right, I'll go through this way first. Come on. Oh my God!
Yes!
Wow, I hope you got that.